So joining us now a year on from, well, I think events that changed the world, and we covered extensively here, and we've talked about in the year we marked the anniversary, and I can remember doing this with Robert Patman for the Ukraine, first year of the Ukraine war. Robert joins us now by video link, our foreign affairs guru. Robert, a year on, and it's a sad question to ask, has any progress been made towards the end of this conflict?
Well, that's a very appropriate question to be asked because a lot of people are not asking it, Sean. We have a situation of almost unimaginable suffering, first on Israel's side, and then the Palestinians, and now increasingly Lebanon is beginning to resemble another Gaza. And the big problem is that while Israel has made military progress against its enemies, its perceived enemies, there is no day after plan. Mr. Netanyahu's agenda seems to be to degrade perceived adversaries, and that's it. But unfortunately, this has always been a political problem, and there's no military solution to this. So, particularly if you apply ever greater quantities of military power and lots of civilians are killed in the process, that only replicates the conditions that led to the use of military force in the first place. So, the other thing here we have to take into account is not just looking beyond the parties in question and saying, like Ukraine, once again, the UN Security Council has been found missing in action. Remember, this conflict has gone on partly because the UN Security Council has not proved to be what it's supposed to be, which is the upholding global peace and security. And so there is a huge institutional failure which we need to deal with.
Yeah. I guess on the good side after a year, Robert, we haven't had World War III, though we now have, as you said, other countries involved in the conflict. We have Iran clearly part of it, and massive missile strikes coming from Iran and the threat of that. But so far, in some ways, the conflict is limited.
Well, it's spreading, and Israel now finds itself engaged on wars on multiple fronts. And it's no secret that Mr. Netanyahu would ideally like American support to take on Iran. Mr. Netanyahu has, as he did with Iraq, Mr. Netanyahu was instrumental in persuading the Americans that invading Iraq in 2003 would positively transform the Middle East environment. Of course, it didn't, it had the reverse effect. He's very keen on taking on the tyrants, as he calls them, in Iran. I don't think anyone should have any illusions about the repressive clerical regime in Iran. The question is whether confronting them militarily will bolster the regime or weaken it.
Robert, just because I know you push for time, the other question I want to ask, and I was suggesting that in a very quiet, in parliamentary recess and school holidays and a quiet news time, much has been made of the sinking, the loss of the Manawanui. Oh, it's going to be an environmental disaster for Samoa, a diplomatic disaster. I'd say it's an accident at sea. Does it damage our international credibility that we sink a ship, one of our Navy ships? How much of a big deal is it for New Zealand as we kind of renegotiate our role in this part of the world?
I think it's a blow. And if anything, we probably need more investment in the Navy because, we consist of two islands and we've got this huge economic exclusive zone. And I know there are voices within the government that like to see a lot more investment in our maritime security, but this is a blow. And but unfortunately, accidents can and do happen.